more about last night's performance. We are joined by Erie County Democratic Committee Jeremy Zoner. Jeremy, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Dave.
In addition to being the Democratic Committee Chairman, you are also a pledged delegate for Joe Biden for this summer's convention. You're going to be going there next month. Is your vote still going for Joe Biden?
Dave, 100%. You know, I think what we saw last night was somebody who had a bad night, you know, and we're not shying away from that. The president's not shying away from that. He was back out on the trail moments after that with events out in Georgia that night. He's been out in Florida and other battleground states today. And I think what he says is the truth. And he said, you know, I'm not saying I'm a young man, and, you know, I am not as good at debating as I used to be, but he does know how to tell the truth. And what you saw last night was a huge contrast from someone who apparently was trying to break the world record of most lies in a debate and someone who was telling the truth. And we are excited for Chicago. We are going to lead a strong delegation there for the president, and I'm excited to support him.
I saw him post-debate last night in Georgia and then today in Raleigh, North Carolina, a completely different Joe Biden. It looked almost 180 degrees. I guess my question is that going to be enough? Those performances like last night in Georgia after the debate today in Raleigh, North Carolina, given the fact that tens of millions of people were tuned in last night, and that's the lasting image that they have.
Well, we've had a lot of conversations all day. We had an event today for our local committee, but I did see some polling numbers. I did see some undecided independent voters in swing states who were swinging in the president's direction because they were kind of reminded about Donald Trump. And the more people get reminded about Donald Trump, the less they like him. You know, as I said, you have a liar-in-chief and you have a commander-in-chief. And Joe Biden definitely had a bad night last night. You know, no Democrat is standing up for him and saying, no, he had a great debate. But you don't see any Republicans coming out and say, geez, those 90% of lies that he told last night, you know, he probably shouldn't have done that. That's the difference here. You have someone who's got a track record for the last 4 years in Joe Biden. We have the fastest recovery out of any nation in the world out of the pandemic. And he got infrastructure done for our country. Donald Trump talked about it.
There are some Democrats saying that maybe he should step aside. What do you think about those thoughts?
You know, that decision is up to the president and his family, and I don't see that happening. I think that the president had a bad night last night, and again, no one is shying away from that, and it was a missed opportunity, I think, for us to show and talk about serious issues, and that only one person on that stage could help with those issues, and that's Joe Biden. But everybody has a bad day, and as I said, he immediately went out back on the campaign trail, and I think was live on CNN right afterwards and sounded great. Today, he was in Florida in battleground states, rolled up his sleeves and had some great rallies. So we've got a long way to get to November here, and I'm looking forward to Chicago and the DNC.
This race is unbelievably close. I mean, a lot of people are saying this is coming down to less than 10% or say 6% of the 6 swing states. And so it is those tens of thousands of voters in each of those little pockets of this country. Those are the people they need to get to. Do you think he has the temerity? Does he have the juice? Does he have it in September to have that improvement on just those tens of thousands of critical voters?
I do. I think he's been nonstop on this campaign trail already, and I think that's going to continue to happen. You know, everyone can talk about polling right now, but the fact is that the campaign really hasn't even begun in many of the swing states. They're not pouring millions of dollars of ads in there talking about the contrast, talking about the issues. But again, you saw last night with Donald Trump, somebody who was just lying and kind of unhinged, somebody who wants to allow the people who stormed the Capitol on January 6th to be released and furloughed and let free, and somebody who's got a plan for our country going forward.
Although the president could have checked him on those lies, and the president did not once.
I didn't see either side land a clean blow. That was, I think, what has got everybody today talking about this debate is neither side could land a clean blow on the other, and, you know, the debate was kind of a waste of everybody's time at some point, and we've just got to go and make our case, and that's what the president got back on the trail and did today.
So I know you said, you know, you're saying he had a bad night last night. Watching his performance, are you at all worried about young voters who are really concerned about his health?
Well, think young voters are going to start to hear about the things that he's done for them. You know, paying off student debt has been a life-changing thing for many people that I talk to who are young voters. Women's choice issues, LGBTQ issues are critical to young people. The environment. I mean, there's two people on that stage, and one of them has done things to help our environment, and one of them has done things to help big corporations continue to pollute our environment. And Joe Biden is the one that continues to stand up for our environment.
You've spent a career and a lifetime in politics. I'm curious what you said just before. There were points last night where it very much lacked any kind of substance. We wondered if we were wasting our time. The point that comes to mind, of course, is when these two men are talking about their golf handicaps. We are in the middle of a presidential campaign. There are wars going on all over this world. There are life and death situations that must be, decisions that must be made. We have a border crisis, and these two men are talking about their golf handicaps. As a politician, as someone who has been in politics, did that not frustrate you? Like, what are we doing here?
It did. You know, I've spent half a lifetime in politics. But I would say that, you know, that was towards the end of the debate, and both of them had been, you know, fighting back and forth for quite a while. There is oftentimes in debates levity, but I would have liked to seen a little more substance. You know, we laid to rest a 3-year-old boy in the city of Buffalo today, and we have too many guns on the streets that are illegal, and that needs to be fixed. And that didn't get touched last night, and no other issues really did either. It's become a campaign about two personalities. But I believe that Joe Biden is the stronger candidate here, and I think he's got the record to prove it, and you're going to see a lot more of that going forward.
Before we let you go, beyond the substance, is there anything else you would like to see on the next debate stage?
Well, I'd like to see a different format. I think that basically this format was set up and that the former president was able to be stifled, which didn't let him continue rambling on about all the things that he's lying about, which in our side shows his inability to stay on target and to say wild things. So I'd like to see a one-on-one debate where they get to talk to one another and they get to have it out.
All right. Erie County Democratic Committee Chairman Jeremy Zellner. Jeremy, thank you for being here.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.